Okay, if you like color, then this is the project for you to watch. I got 2 chairs from a friend of mine and I found a table and decided to totally transform them and make them quite colorful. I hope you enjoy this project. So the before, you can tell that these were reupholstered into a very 80s, 90s type of fabric. It was a mauve and blue, and they sat for a little while in my garage till I finally decided what to do with them. Hey, guess what I'm doing? I'm painting fabric. So that's what I started. This is the one I'm gonna work on now. So if you wanna see how you can actually get away with not paying to get something reupholstered, check this out. So when painting fabric, one of the main things you want to do is really get the fabric damp. And I'm using a fine mister to get the fabric wet, and then using a Klingon brush, I used the color Fancy Farm Girl, and this is by DIY Paint. Kind of stippled it and pressed it into the fabric. And it's not a bad idea to wet your brush as well, because what you're doing is really dyeing this fabric, because the DIY paint will, because of the many pigments and really rich pigments in this paint, it's going to dye the fabric as well as cover it. So at first I was thinking about leaving the wood, but then the more I got into it, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to do something really fun with these chairs. So I hope you enjoy watching this. So getting in all the nooks and crannies, using this Klingon brush was a good choice, because it really is able to get into the crevices of this Eastlake chair. The design in this is just beautiful, and I know some people would be upset that I painted it, but I think wait till you see the end, and it was just such a fun project. DIY paint, because it's highly pigmented, it really does cover pretty well in one coat. I did 2 coats on these, but as you can see, it's covering really well, and the dye in the paint really will sink into this fabric, and it'll just take over that mauve and blue color that was the original upholstery on these chairs. Actually, this was not the original upholstery on the chair. This was reupholstered probably, I would say, in the 80s or 90s. Here's my chair, and I've had these for a couple years. I think 2, 3 years maybe. One of my son's friend's mothers was downsizing her house. These are old Eastlake chairs, very old and very solid. They have beautiful wheels on the bottom, and this was a total 80s fabric with the mauve and blue. So I was gonna get them reupholstered. There's a whole back and front and all this, and so that was gonna cost quite a bit of money. And so I was like, let me try this, because I've seen Debbie do this from Debbie's DIY Paint, but I had tried it one time on an ottoman and it worked. It worked great. I don't know why I was scared to do this. But anyway, here we go. So I painted this, and this is still drying, but what I wanna show you is some fun, I just wanna do some fun things with this, with different colors, because this is what we're gonna end up using on here. I'm gonna use this inlay, this paint inlay by DIY Paint. I'm thinking I might just use this bird on this one and this one on the other, but this is so pretty too, but I only have one of those, so I'd have to open up another pack, which is fine, but I think I'm just gonna go with the big bird. I've gotta figure that out. But I thought, well, let me show you how I'm gonna play around with colors. So what I have here, I have Cake Batter, I have Summer Crush, I have Queen Bee, I have kissing booth and I have weathered wood. I don't know if I'll use the weathered wood, but I thought maybe just a little bit to give some interest. So the original color was Fancy Farm Girl. I need to get more because I ran out. I only had a little bit left, but it did go pretty far. But I'm going to now be decorating this. So let's see how it goes. I'm gonna start with Kissing Booth because I want that to be very subtle. So using the Kissing Booth and a blue ice detailed brush, I added the pink paint to all the wood areas, just as a highlight that was going to be behind some of these other colors that I will be adding. So just randomly adding it, and it really will make the colors pop in the inlay once I add them as well. I got the pink highlighted and now I'm gonna go on to the yellow. So I have Queen Bee and cake batter, and I do know that the Queen Bee probably goes a little bit better, but I don't think that the cake batter is bad as a highlight, and it's a little bit of a softer color, so I'm gonna go with the cake batter. And this is gonna be, I'm not playing around. Obviously, you know, things are ugly before they get pretty. I always say that. So, and look at this, goodness. This is like all thick and kind of you can reactivate this with water, but there's some fun things you can do when your paint is thick like this. And so I'm just going to kind of finger paint a little bit with this and add some of this like thickened paint. It's almost like you've added thickener to it, but I didn't. And so I'm going to just grab some of this outside of this jar. This is where it's a little messy, but it's kind of cool. Takes me back to my childhood days. Kind of playing as I go here. Actually, let me just grab a little bit more and bring this down here. And I'm not gonna do as much in here because this is where the inlay is gonna be. So I'm not worried about that, but I did just finish the pink, so it's mixing a little bit. But I don't want to make a new color. I just want it to be layered. So I'm gonna leave that like that. And we're just gonna see how this looks, because what's the worst can happen? I have to just paint green back over it. But I think I'm gonna really like this, especially when I put this on here, or I like this green bird here. I think that's gonna be. So here I am speeding up the process a little bit, and sorry for the camera not being on the project in part of that video, but I did want to just show you what I was doing with adding layers of paint. So as you can see, the Kissing Booth was on first, then went on with the cake batter, some using my finger painting method and another part using the spackle knife, and just spreading it and kind of creating a layered look. So when you're looking at the paint inlay, you want to hold the paint side down to your project so that you can see how it will fit on your piece. So here I am just trying to figure out, what do I want on this chair back? Do I want the whole bird? Do I want part of the flowers? And I'm just holding it up to figure that out. Once I've cut the paint inlay to the size that I want, I lightly spritz it with a fine mister to activate the paint on the paint side of the paper. The chair itself has a new coat of Fancy Farm Girl, so that paint is wet. I just applied it, and once I wet the paper, I will put the paint side down onto the wet paint on the chair back. So now that the paint inlay is set into the wet paint, you want to spread it. I just use my hand to smooth it out, try and get wrinkles out, that type of thing. Sometimes I will use a brayer, especially if it's on a flat surface. And also using the fine mist bottle, I'm spraying water onto this so that it's really going to make the paper more set into the wet paint. And you're going to find some areas sometimes that maybe the paint underneath has dried a little bit. So here I am just pulling that back, adding a little bit more of the Fancy Farm Girl in there to make sure that the connection between the wet paint on the chair is making a good connection with the paint inlay itself. Misting the paper will cause the whole image to really pop, and the white paper will kind of disappear. That's when you know that you've really set the paint inlay into the paint, and this is when you smooth it out, and then you're just going to let it dry on its own. Here I am lightly using just a cloth and then also the brayer. Sometimes it helps to get maybe little wrinkles out, that type of thing, but just do it very smoothly. You don't want to rip your paper, but this will allow the image that is on the paint inlay to really set into the paint on the chair. I'm continuing to smooth the inlay out just to make sure that there's good connection between all the sections of this design. That white part at the top was just an extra piece of the inlay. There was no image on there, so I wasn't worried about getting that wet. But the rest of it, you can really see how it's set into that paint. You almost can't even see the paper itself. So this is the fun part. Well, it's all fun, but this is where the magic really happens with paint inlays. Once it's totally dry, I re-wet the whole entire surface, and you can do a pretty good amount of fine mist on the whole surface of the paint inlay. You will see it reactivate as it darkens and that image starts to show through again. You can actually even just use your hand, and I like to press into it so that the water is actually reactivating the paint underneath as well, because it will release better as it's wet. Look quickly just at the top to see if it's going to release, and it is. So I slowly pull it back and reveal the image that has been now set into the paint that was on this chair. This is so much fun, and it's so satisfying to see how these products work. The paint inlay is truly a unique product, and it makes this project look like it's hand painted into the fabric. So as you know, there were two of these chairs, and I had to just show you the reveal of the paint inlay on the second one as well. I realized as I was spritzing the water, my water bottle was not working that great. It was pretty an older one. So I covered the seat of the chair because it was still not sealed, and I didn't want to reactivate that paint, but I did want to reactivate the inlay. So here I am just adding the fine mist again to it, rubbing the water into it to make sure it's going to release. And then this is the fun part. I love showing this again. So I thought you would enjoy seeing the reveal on this chair as well. Chairs were done, but I also did a small table, and I thought I would just show you a little bit of me doing the table. I was looking to decide what part of the inlay I wanted to use on this top part of the table. This inlay is actually an 8-page set, so there are tons of different options, and I ended up deciding to use the birds, the two birds facing each other on the top part of this. Now this color green was a little bit different. The base color was gypsy green, I believe, and I painted that first and got the first coat on, and then I will paint the second coat, and I'm just going to show you the inlay part of this project. So the second coat is on, it is wet, and I am just misting this paint inlay. I'm misting again, I'm using the paint side, making sure that that is slightly damp, and that activates the paint that is on that paper. So this will show you an example of doing a paint inlay on a flat surface using the brayer. I'm just making sure that the paper is flat and the wrinkles are out, and now I'm going to spread the bubbles or the wrinkles with the brayer. It just really helps make a good connection between the paint on the base, which is wet, and the wet paint on the paint inlay. So again, just rolling it smooth helps with making it a nice smooth finish, and then making sure that the whole piece is really wet. Here's where you can really see how, as you add the fine mist water, it helps to make the paper stick into that wet paint. So once the paint inlays were dry, I took a 50-50 mix of top coat and water in a fine mister and gave everything a fine mist to set the inlay in place, and then used a brush to put the top coat over all the pieces. They arrived at my shop, and the table sold the first day, and the chair set sold within a week. This project was so much fun, and I hope I inspired you to try the paint inlays and try a little color. It's really fun to do something different and out of the box. If you haven't already, subscribed and like my YouTube. I appreciate it. Have a great day.